for anyone who might be thinking about 2021 in general as a way to potentially a time for resetting, or having had an awful lot of time to reflect maybe in 2020, I just thought, having a chat with you, Paul, about forming habits and what's maybe some of the science around it, and what are some of the things that you do that over the course of a little front burner video this week, that might be a good conversation for us to have.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I suppose in some ways I've been aware of, or maybe interested in this area for a long time. I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think about both personally and then with people that you and I might work with, or with groups or with teams, when you think about trying to form new habits, I tend to first sort of the encouragement would be to take a step back and say, okay, if you're trying to form new habits around something, whether it's your health and well-being, whether it's something to do with your work, your family life, whatever it might be, is first of all to ask the question, why is this important to me? And the logic, I think, of starting there is to try and connect maybe habit with something that really matters to you, and is of real significance to you. So a simple example might be if somebody said, I'd like to get more sleep, or I'd like to improve the quality of my sleep, which is fine in and of itself. The question I'd be asking there is, so why is sleep important? And it might be important to somebody because maybe they're a little bit irritable around the family, because they're a little bit tired, they're not getting the renewal they need, or maybe they're not as good a leader as they want to be in their role, because they're a little bit, their energy levels are low. So I suppose connecting it with something that really matters is the first thing. And I think when you sort of emotionally, in a way, connect with, right, what am I trying to bring about here, and how am I trying to live, then sort of use that to sort of go into, right, okay, now I've got clarity on that. Let's jump into how we might create some better habits. Because I think sometimes we can, and again, I include myself obviously in all this, I think sometimes we can go straight to action around the habits or the behaviors without maybe first taking a step back and maybe looking a bit more inward to go, right, why am I doing this, and what's the impact I want to see from this?
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of where I would tend to start. The second thing, maybe at a sort of a high level then, is I think about the language that I'm using. So often you'll hear people say, I should do this, or I need to do this. And even if you think of the word should, SHOULD, like I heard this from somebody recently, like should, that's, if you think of the word shouldering, should is a big part of shouldering. So if I'm saying I should do something, it's nearly like I'm subconsciously shouldering some expectation of, well, why should I do it? Maybe I shouldn't do it. Or I need to do something. It's nearly bringing with it an energy around it's coming from somebody else, or it's coming from an expectation of somebody else. So I'd be curious around the language that I'm using as well. So, and I think it brings a different level of ownership. If someone's saying I should do something, or I need to do something, to I want to do this. I want to do this for me. I want to do this for my family, whatever it might be. So I think the language is important, because it's to me, when you're using the words like I want to, I am doing, I will do, as opposed to I should, I need, I think there's a greater sense of personal ownership for it too, if that makes sense. And I think that's just at an initial thought, I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point. There's almost like you're right, there's an emotional, we have to kind of get out of intellectualizing why we might want to do something and actually tune into, emotionally, can I connect with something that's going to maybe push me over the edge to actually doing something.
Yeah, exactly. Like when, you and I, we've chatted about this, and we've had lots of conversations in Below the Line and with clients about this as well, and colleagues and friends. Life is short. We only, 2020, the year we've just experienced, that's probably hammered this point home to lots of us in different ways at different times. But, life is short. So I suppose each of us gets to decide whether that's with a lot of intention or with a lot of conscious awareness, how we want to live and how we want to experience life. So I think part of, bringing in new habits and new behaviors is also, it's nearly, I sometimes think you could put this into one sentence. How do you want to experience life? And I often do this at the start of each year, or at least I revisit it from the previous year and see, has that shifted? For me, that's nearly the starting point around building out habits or behaviors, is in one sentence, how do I want to experience life? So for me, it's around, living life with meaning, time, and presence.
Right.
For me, that's around meaning in the work I do, and just how I live life, and the crack and the fun and stuff that I do in life.
Yeah.
The time is around, I don't want to be rushing and going a million miles an hour. Some people love that, which is great. Not for me. Some people, it's near like a badge of honor. Oh, I'm so busy, I'm up to my eyes. I just don't want that. That's what meaning means to me. And with presence then is around having energy. So when I'm with you right now, I'm with you. I'm not distracted. I'm not sort of camping in one place. So I nearly sort of, that it's near like a guiding sentence is sort of how I begin, and then sort of try and build everything out.
And how does that then, I get, that was my next question. How in practical terms does that get built into habits or practices for you then?
It's interesting. I think with, if somebody was to say, put their own sentence together, or even think of it as, right, 2021, it's another chapter in my life, and there's a title on that, whatever that may be. From then, you might then go, okay, so what are the habits that I have right now? What are the behaviors I have that are serving me well? Or what are the ones that maybe actually aren't serving me well? And there's a really simple exercise you can do. We were talking about this earlier. There's a great book I highly recommend. There's two great books that I read. One I'm halfway through, one I've read before. One is called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Really good book. And James Clear has written a book which came out, I think it was this 2020 or 2019, called Atomic Habits, which is an excellent book. And there's a Stanford professor called BJ Fogg who's written a book called Tiny Habits. There are three really good books, and BJ Fogg has pioneered a lot of the research in this area. But one of the things you can simply do, which has been referenced in a few of the books I've mentioned there, is put together, and James Clear talks about this, it's simply a habit scorecard. So if you write down, for the moment you get up in the morning, all the various things that you do, and a lot of them are, we can get into the science around the brain and the habits in a second, but if you, a lot of what we do is habitual behavior. So if you're writing down everything from, I'm getting out of bed, I'm having a shower, I'm making my breakfast, I'm getting dressed, I'm sitting down on my computer, maybe prior to 2020 for lots of people who are traveling into work, maybe that's changed. So you're writing down everything you do, and you can literally give that a score. So is it a positive, is it a negative, or is it neutral? So having a shower, I might say, well, sort of pretty neutral. Yeah, I enjoy it, but it's not anything earth-shattering that's going to change the course of my life. So that's the first thing, is looking at what are the ones that I want to change, and these might be connected with a certain area. So I mentioned earlier sleep. So you might find that some of your evening habits and the things that you do in the evening time are going to influence the quality of sleep that you get. So a habit might be, I'm lying in bed, I'm on my phone and looking at media, I'm reading stuff, and that could be just before you go to bed. So that potentially could be interfering with your sleep patterns, because we know that the blue light from screens suppresses the production of melatonin in our body, and melatonin makes us feel drowsy and help us sleep. So it's one of the reasons why lots of exposure to blue light before we sleep, within an hour and a half of it, can have a negative impact on sleep. So it might be, somebody might start with, I want to improve the quality of my sleep or my energy or whatever it might be. And as you list down the habits, it might just become clear to go, okay, here's a couple of these that really aren't serving me and I'd like to change them. So that might be a starting point. The second thing is to look at things that happen to you during the day. So it might be things that, your phone will ring, you will get emails from people. It might be things that you don't necessarily initiate, but they will happen to you throughout the day. And the reason you'd sort of look at those is because you're getting into using these. There's a technique called habit stacking, which you can start to use both of these to then build out better habits, which we can come on to maybe habit stacking in a second. So I think, first of all, just big picture, really simple. What are the things that are serving me? What are the things that are not? And linking these to the areas that you want to improve.